بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. أسأل الله تبارك وتعالى أن يجعل نياتنا خالصة لوجهه الكريم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Inshallah ta'ala, we're going to continue with our discussion. We only have one point left that I wanted to discuss, and then I will open for a few of your questions that you may have about this aspect of Asaanid and how we transfer knowledge. So we talked about, over the last 2 days, the narrations from Muhammad ibn Sirin and Abdullah ibn Mubarak about how to take Islamic knowledge. And we related the statement of Imam Muslim in the introduction to his authentic collection of hadith, as-Sahih, where he mentioned the statement of Muhammad ibn Sirin radiallahu ta'ala anhu, when he said, "Inna hadha al-ilm deen, fanzuru amman ta'khudhuna deenakum." Verily, this knowledge you're learning is the religion, so look well from whom you take your religion. And the statement of Abdullah ibn Mubarak radiallahu ta'ala anhu, "Al-isnadu min ad-deen, walau la isnad laqala man sha ma sha." And we talked about two of the main ways to acquire knowledge. One is as-sama'u, and the other is al-qira'ah. As-sama'u lafz al-shaykh, wal-qira'atu ala shaykh. The first one is that you hear the words of your teacher, who conveys from you to you knowledge from his previous teachers, and sometimes that knowledge he may convey just by dictation, or he may convey from a book, but it is from him to you. And the second way is al-qira'atu ala shaykh, where you would read, or someone else would read upon a shaykh while you are listening. And this is another way to acquire knowledge. Then you have the third way that I was going to discuss, and these are the top two ways: as-sama' and al-qira'ah, actually hearing, and al-qira'ah. And I want us, let these classes be a start for you, that you see how we learn. We have a book. Sometimes I'm reading or speaking by myself, and I'm explaining, like now, this is as-sama', you're hearing me. I'm coming from my mind, and I'm explaining things. I may have a book, I may read some lines. This is called as-sama', right? And these same things, these same points I'm conveying to you, I heard directly from Sheikh Samir al-Nas, right? And other teachers. I've heard this directly from them, sitting with them and heard them. At times, the same information, I heard qira'atan. I heard someone else reading to the sheikh, and I was there listening to his explanation. So this particular information that I'm giving you, I heard more than one way, right? Ijazatan, Now, the way of ijaza is that, so the third way is al-ijaza. Al-ijaza, I'm going to start with these three ways. It is permission to narrate from the route of a teacher, either by his words or he writes, right? That means this is a brief way of the teacher informing you about information that he possesses and giving you authorization to relate that information from his route. So the least of these three ways that I mentioned, and there are more, but these three are the most important for us right now, and we should really stick to them at this point, is you know of a teacher, you met with that teacher, or you spoke to that teacher, or you wrote to that teacher, or you text that teacher, or, you know, some way you had some or someone else talk to that teacher for you. And that teacher trusts you and he gives you authorization to relate knowledge from his route. This is called al-ijaza, right? So that teacher gives you the authorization to relate from his route. And in this way, whatever you relate should be known that it came from the teacher and his route. Now, whenever a sheikh gives you an ijaza, that means he usually gives it to you with certain conditions, which are well known, that you relate from him what is reliably conveyed from him. So in other words, if a teacher gives you ijaza in something, you make sure when you relate it that it is what he would give you permission to relate, right? So you relate from a trustworthy book, a trustworthy source, for example, to the best of your ability. And you could relate that information through his chain of narrations, even though you may not have studied the information yourself. But you're not relating it from yourself. You're relating it from the route of the teacher who gave you permission to relate. Now, so when we look at ijaza, you can look at it in two ways. And we should keep this in mind. You can have ijaza to a riwaya. I'm putting it so you can pronounce it. Or ijaza at-tadris. I'll just put that, excuse me. I need my glasses. Right? So you're going to have, number one, the ijaza to riwaya. Ijaza of a riwaya is that you just narrate. You don't explain, you don't add. That means my sheikh related this information from his route, and he authorized me to do the same, right? So that's a riwaya. Now you are able to rate. So, for instance, I had a teacher tell me that just the other day, I talked to him. He said, I give you ijaza to relay the books of hadith from my route. And my narrations. So what does that mean? That means if I know what books he relate, he's giving me the permission to relate those books from his route. So I say, I relate Sahih Bukhari from the route of Sheikh so-and-so, who relates from Sheikh so-and-so all the way back to Imam al-Bukhari. That's a riwayah, that's it. Now, for me to do that, I should be careful to make sure the copy of al-Bukhari I am relating is a reliable copy. So I don't relate from his route something that I am not sure is valid and attribute it to him, right? So by way of that, as a person who's going to relate from that route, you should have some responsibility of ensuring that what you're relating is approved of to relate from that teacher. But your job is what? Just to relate, not to go further than that. I relate from the route of the sheikh. What is in the book, not what is being added to the book, not the commentary, not the footnotes. What is related in that book, right? Secondly, so that's one thing. And that riwayah, that type of ijazah, has two main purposes. Both of them, I think, are beneficial. Number one, the first aspect is maintaining a continuous link from generation of Muslims to generations of Muslims. So you're maintaining a complete link. So I received ijazah from this teacher who received, and he may have heard the book from another teacher. With this particular teacher that I was talking about, he relates and explains. So I heard his relations, I heard his explanations, say for al-Bukhari. I know from whom he relates and what he relates. And usually, which is good that comes with that, he would give you, and how do you say? He would give you his teachers and who he related from and tell you about that. So that is extra, right? But it's not necessary, but it would be extra because now you know exactly which book, who he related from and where they related from and how. It's a little bit more details it can get. But nevertheless, that is valid authorization. And it maintains generation to generation, right? Of links back to, say, Imam al-Bukhari, for instance, right? So that's one benefit. That means you know how Sahih al-Bukhari reached us through a legitimate route of teacher, student, that isnad all the way down to us. So we ensure that this book reached us in a trustworthy way. So that's one. The second is the blessing of being connected to the pious people, because those narrators of those books, many of them were among as-salihin. They were among the righteous people. They were pious people. They were people of barakah. They were people who, just mentioning them, the mercy of Allah descends. So being connected to that link authentically and in an acceptable Islamic way is important. It's very important. So that those two things. So for the barakah and for the continuation of transmitting our knowledge in a trustworthy manner. So this is Ijazatul Riwaya, and it has its purpose. What is extra to that, and I believe really the objective of seeking knowledge altogether and learning and benefiting, is to convey it. So that is Ijazatul Tadris. That is, that Sheikh not only gives you authorization, but he says you can convey this knowledge from my route and explain it as I deem you qualified to do it, right? I deem you qualified to do it. Now, that could happen in several ways. The optimal way is that you actually read that book with that teacher. So, right? So, for instance, Sahih al-Bukhari, I read and heard and sat with Sheikh Samir on different occasions in Sahih al-Bukhari. Some of it riwayah, some of it with deep explanations at different times, right? So in some portions, I can relate from riwayah and ijaza. And some portions, I can relate and teach it because I sat with him, went over it, explained narrations, chains of narration, the narrators of the hadith, the explanation of the hadith. So that's another way. So that part that I covered, those hadith that I covered with him, I can actually teach them. And so when he give me ijaza, he knows that I know you, I know what you've learned, I know what you do. You can convey that from my route, right? And you can teach it and you can convey it to others. So that's another way, right? And usually when you have the ijaza telling you to teach, right, that means that sheikh really knows about you. Or even if he didn't read it with you, he knows your level and he knows that you are able to convey it accurately and you're trustworthy and you will do it the right way. So not all the time when the teacher gives you authorization to teach the ijaza, to teach what you relate from him, it's not always that you read it on him or that you heard it read. It may be sometimes because he knows your trustworthiness and he knows your abilities to do it, right? So when we're talking about this is a ways to acquire knowledge. For us, we should make this a habit, right? This is the way of Ahl Sunnah, right? And when we do this in this way, number one, we'll fit in with the whole Islamic world, number one. Number two, we'll have checks and balances in our knowledge, right? So even if we're not knowledgeable ourselves, right? Like myself, I'm not knowledgeable. But no one can come to me and play knowledgeable either. Why? Because I'm in this system. So if someone comes to me, for instance, I don't care where he's from. I don't care what language he speaks. It doesn't make a difference. If he comes to me, he's got to have correct Ahl Sunnah knowledge. If he doesn't, I'm going to catch him. If he's, what we used to say in the prisons, if he's wailing, he's just shooting from his hip, I'm going to catch him. Not saying he's not going to make mistakes. Every human makes mistakes. So that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about he's fabricating in the religion. I'm going to catch him. And it's going to be quick. And he's going to be shocked, right? Because I know the system, right? There is a system of learning, right? I'm going to be aware that you're not what you're claiming. Quick. So when that person relates, from whom do you relate? How did you relate? What did you relate? What did you cover? Boom, boom, boom. Where's your chain of narration? From whom did your sheikh relate? From whom did he relate? From whom did he relate? Then all your claims going to come falling down, right? All the claims going to collapse. Why? Because it's a system. And sometimes the claim is most of the times when claims are made, if you have a chain of narration, the chain of narration is going to collapse the claim. I'll give you an example. So the person comes and he says, I'm Maliki. okay? Or I'm Shafi'i, or I'm Hanbali, or I'm Hanafi. And then he's teaching something about the Hanafi madhab, or the Shafi'i madhab, or the Maliki madhab, or the Hanbali madhab, for instance. Then we're going to say, okay, from where do you relate this information? I studied this with Sheikh so-and-so. Was it him dictating? Was it he reading a book, or a book was read on him? Was it ijaza, general ijaza, ijaza to amma, which is like a general ijaza for everything, not for what you're doing? Was it ijaza riwaya? Was it ijaza tadris? How did you learn? He said, okay, I read such and such book on the sheikh. Okay. Now here you already protected. Why? Because the book exists. The real book that he read exists. So if he's saying something that doesn't match the book, you already know what? He's fabricating. He's mistaken. He's in error. The book exists, right? The sheikh may exist. Students of the sheikh may exist. Okay, let me go to another student of that sheikh who learned that same book from the sheikh, and let me take that knowledge from them to make sure it's consistent, right? You weren't the only one who learned from the sheikh, right? You weren't the only one who learned that. There were others, right? And I'm quite sure the sheikh didn't exclude you only, and he's the only one on the face of the earth that he taught this stuff to. So there should be others, because sheikh has students, right? And those students relate too. You see how these checks and balances exist? I remember one popular speaker, he wrote a biography about himself. And he said, I studied this, and I studied this, and I studied this, and I studied this, and I studied this. And in Hadith, I studied this. In Fiqh, I studied this. In Aqidah, I studied this. In Arabic, I studied this. And I was sitting there reading that biography, and I said, he is lying. So how you going to say he's a liar? I said, he's not only a liar, he's a bold-faced liar. What do you mean? No one in the planet studies like that. Nowhere, not I read this and I read this on this. Nowhere in the planet are people studying like that. All those books. One person. That's not even the trait of scholars in our time. No. He don't even have enough time in his life to study all that stuff. That is all what? Narration. That's ijazatul riwaya. That's not as-sama' left to sheikh. Even qira'ata ala sheikh. Al-qira'atu ala sheikh. Not even reading on the sheikh. All these books, some of these books were 10 volumes, 18 volumes, 20 volumes, and all these different sciences. Ain't no one doing that in the planet. And your lifespan, and I knew the person, doesn't allow for you to do that kind of study. You didn't live that long. To do that work, what it would take to do it, you haven't even been studying that long. But he never named the sheikhs who he did all that stuff with. He just named, I did this, I did this, I did this. With who? Who you study with all that? And I highly doubt, to go extra, that he even read all that stuff himself. I'm not saying he doesn't have ijaza to relate. And someone thought that he had ahliyah, that he was qualified to teach, and even gave him ijaza to tadris. But to say you read all that stuff on your teachers with a chain of narration is not true. That's not true at all. I'm talking about the amount was over 100 150 volumes. And anyone who studies knows that is not the habit of people in the world today. Anyone who studies knows that. Very few that you would have a person who studied with a teacher the whole of Fathul Bari, the whole of Tafsir al-Qurtubi, the whole of Tafsir al-Tabari, the whole of Sharh Sahih Muslim by An-Nawawi, the whole thing, sama'an wa qira'atan wa sharhan. Come on, knock it off. What I mean, you read it, you studied it, it was explained. All those books? Come on, man. And books of language and Arabic language, Alfiya ibn Malik, and come on, bro. Would you knock it off? Stop. Just say, come on, man. Any of you in here have studied traditional Islamic studies? Maybe some. I don't know, just if you could just give me an indication. That study, say 5 years of study, right? With teachers. Anyone studied that long with teachers? And different ulum, I mean, really studying, not just one book. Like you sat with teachers and y'all studied the Islamic sciences. Anyone? I'm just going to ask you a question. I'm not going to give you a test. I want to get it. I want to make sure I'm thinking right. Come on. We're brothers and sisters and family. Speak up or forever hold your peace. And if nobody here has studied, then this is beautiful, right? Just books. Right? Have you known anyone who studied and read all of Ibn Hajar's Fathul Bari, all of An-Nawawi's Sharh Sahih Muslim, all of Tafsir al-Tabari, all of Tafsir al-Qurtubi, studied the whole book with explanation with a teacher? Do you know anyone like that in all of your studies? Obviously not. And you study for some years and you don't see that, right? It takes years just to do one of those books with regular life and doing everything. To do one of those books like that, it would take years. So I'm saying all that to show you how this stuff is a protection. And we need that protection because we live in a time where many people are cheating in the name of religion because of our ignorance. They're cheating in the name of religion because of our ignorance. And we just want to preserve our deen, right? We want to make sure and even if it's only a little bit, fine, just a little bit that's correct and that's accurate and that's trustworthy and that's reliable. He said, I've just learned how to pronounce the letter Ain. Don't worry. After years of study, I still don't know how to pronounce the letter Ain. So, Shaquille, you are right. You're on the road. You're doing a great job. And trust me, this normally in traditional Islamic circles would be the concern of scholars only. Maybe students of knowledge, right? But in our time, and I remember telling Sheikh Samir this, Hafidhullah, he was like, why you teach all this stuff? I said, Sheikh, we live in a different environment. We don't live in Damascus. It's a different environment. And what do I mean by that? I said, we're in an environment where people think they're scholars. And if you try to teach them a basic text, start them from the beginning, they're going to reject. They're not going to listen to you. Because we have elements telling people just follow Quran and Sunnah. Right? Just follow Quran and Sunnah. And you can go to the book. I heard someone the other day, I'm just giving you an example. He said, I only read the major books. Big books only. Like, the books that are written for scholars only. I don't read basic texts. I skip all that. I want the evidence. I want to know the proofs. I want to know. And not realizing that there are conditions you need to meet before you're able to understand what's in those books. But you went from zero to 100 overnight. That's for laymen. When did you become a scholar? He said, that's for laymen. Right? But serious, that's the mindset, though. That's the mindset. So there's a bunch of prerequisites that you got to meet to read those books, and he just skipped all that, and he's up in the books, and then he's going to come back and teach people. And he doesn't know. You got to start from A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3. You got to build up. You can't just go to major books, open up books, and stuff will drive you crazy. Well, that's what happens. That's why they come back teaching us. But it's not like that. It's not that kind of party, right? And this applies for everyone. So we need, at least in our communities, a system that is really like that. And trust me, we need to make sure that it's like that. Because a lot of this stuff is just talk. You got guys talking about, yeah, you must have a qualified teacher and you must relate. And your teacher himself is not qualified and he ain't relating. And what I mean qualified, his stuff is broken himself. And he's demanding stuff and talking like he's Sheikh al-Islam. And he ain't like that. He's controlling you with that stuff. So we got to set up a system for the future, for ourselves and for the future, where we know how our religion is conveyed, right? And it's a protection. So when that guy comes and he's acting like he's big sheikh, we gonna sit him down. Man, sit down. Teach what you know and stay in your place. Don't act like you more than you are. Whatever you know, alhamdulillah, whatever you learn properly, we're going to learn it, we're going to benefit, and then we're going to go seek more knowledge. Don't try to lose your little bit of knowledge to control us. Absolutely not. Sit down. And it won't take us long to sit you down. It won't take long because we want to benefit each other. So if you're trying to elevate yourself over us and you're not really qualified like that, we're going to sit you down. If you're just trying to benefit us and help us, it's no problem. We all just learning, mashallah, to whatever you learn, we're going to learn, and then we're going to go to the next level and build our communities. But if you think we're going to stop at your level as if you are Sheikh al-Islam, Sheikh al-Hadith, or, Mufti of our time, not. Sit down and you go learn yourself. Really, I see some, and I'm speaking in broad terms. We got to change that environment. That's how a guy, I told you about the guy. I told you the story and I'll stop with it real quick. The guy comes in the masjid. He says, and he walks in Masjid Muhammad. And I told you the story before, but I'll make it quick. He walked in Masjid Muhammad, it's a group of them. He said, he is a muhaddith. He is a great scholar in hadith. Translation, you Negroes, sit down and he's going to take over. That was the translation. It was understood. That's why they was pumping him up. So I was coming out the masjid while they was doing that. you know, bringing him, yeah, here's the Maulana, he's a mufti, he's a muhaddith, blah, 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 blah. And he's coming in and you Negroes sit down. So I walked up to him, said, Assalamu alaikum. I said, you're a muhaddith. Like, Ajib, mashallah, you're a muhaddith. Yes, son. I study, boom. I said, tell me the first hadith in Al-Bukhari with its chain of narration. The first hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari with its narration. He was stuck. I said, you're a muhaddith. This is easy. If you're a muhaddith, this is easy. The first hadith in Al-Bukhari, go for it. Give me the chain of narration and the hadith correctly with the right riwayah. Now, I know already in Al-Bukhari, there are 7 different narrations of the first hadith in the A'malu bin Niyat. There are 7 different narrations in Al-Bukhari. And I'm listening to see if he narrates the hadith correctly. And guess what? Plop, 0, failed. I thought you were a muhaddith. Don't know the chain of narration and don't even know the first narration. All mixed up. Obviously, you're not muhaddith. So just say you're a student of hadith and you learn some hadith, and that's fine. The claim of muhaddith, stop. Stop. That's a claim and it's a false claim. Now you're embarrassed. And then he turns to me, where did you learn hadith? I said, I'm not a muhaddith. So if I'm not a muhaddith and I caught you, what that means you. But that's what happens to us in our communities, right? He would have already came. These are all blacks. They don't know nothing. And I'm going to tell them how it is. And you should have saw his face. And there was brothers there that saw what happened. He was like, uh-oh. But claims. You don't got to do that. Just say I studied in the madrasa in Darul Uloom and I learned some stuff and mashallah. It's fine. Now share what you got. We cool with that. All these claims so you can be superior, so we can sit at your feet. Man, knock it off. Get out of here with that. Them days is over for black folks. I'm serious. And it should be over for everybody. But them days over. Gone. And that's why this way of knowledge is so important. I'm sorry, we got to get out of here for, let me see, hold on one second. Yeah, we got to go to post-Fajr reflections. I'm sorry. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. We'll have to stop here. We're running into post-Fajr reflections. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.